The picket lines have been set and the banners drawn. The writers are on strike. Welcome to SciTrek, your sci-fi TV and movie channel. So yes, from midnight last night, the writers have gone on strike. The pens have been put down. No more scripts will be completed and handed in. But why has this happened and how did we get to this point? And to be honest, how is this now going to affect some of the big projects we've been looking forward to? Well, we got to this point basically because the writers have been felt a bit gypped for quite a long time. And the gap between what the Writers Guild of America have been asking for and what the Alliance of Studios have been willing to offer has been vast. But what are the writers actually so upset about? Well, this basically comes down to pay. For a long time now, the writers have had their pay and their something called residuals, which is kind of like royalties, money they get after the fact of a show. If a show's very popular, they get a little bit more money, that kind of thing. That money has been squeezed and squeezed. And a lot of writers, even top showrunners, have been on the minimum pay, something that's called scale in the industry, for quite some time. In fact, there are more writers that work for scale now than ever before. There's also some big technological reasons why the writers aren't very happy and why they feel they need a new contract to reflect the new technological landscape we now live. One being streaming services. Streaming services are not particularly excited about releasing their actual viewing hours. Now, we used to get viewing figures. Now we get viewing hours. How many times a show is actually watched. Now, the rumor is that Netflix in particular really don't want there to be greater transparency with the writers and the rest of us about those viewing hours. They like to keep those viewing figures quite quiet. Now, apparently, the other streaming services aren't as bothered about this, but Netflix are determined that they're not going to allow it. Now, the writers really want greater transparency because they get residuals based on how much a show is then actually watched. They get like a bit of extra money if a show does well. They don't have those numbers, so they are not confident that their residuals are actually accurate. Now, most of us, we get paid on how many hours we do. But if part of our pay was based on success and that bonus at the end of the year, but then the company didn't really tell us how profitable the company had been, they just threw us a bonus and just said, just trust us, you probably wouldn't go for it. You'd probably be wondering why you got £5,000 one year and only 50 quid the next. That is basically what the writers have been living with for quite some time. There's also another technological marvel, AI. Now, the writers say that if they write a story that then gets put into an AI, and that AI then writes another story based on that, surely they deserve some of those residuals because the story that's then been created has been written basically by them. The writers are saying, surely if this story is based on what I wrote, don't I deserve some of the residuals? Now, this is a slightly complicated problem. There are legal issues with this. So the studios aren't really just being complete knobheads about this. I suspect they just don't quite know the answer. Now, what the studios have suggested is they will have annual meetings to discuss the advancements in technology and what can be done to support the writers. The writers are saying, no, we want something agreed now. So on that part, I don't think the writers are being 100% fair because I think even though they are 100% right in what they're saying, there are actual practical problems to what they're talking about. Legally, if that is a new piece of material, how do you then actually decide how much of that should actually go back to the writers? I can see that that's probably legally a minefield. But one thing we can 100% all agree on is pay. As part of this contract between the WGA and the Alliance of Studios, there is a minimum pay agreement. They call it working for scale, as I mentioned earlier. Now, lots and lots of writers, unfortunately, have to work for the scale, even some showrunners. If you think you're the boss and you're still working for minimum pay, that sucks. But not just this. There's been a big problem with job security. Now, the Writers Guild of America want the studios to start putting the writers on longer contracts. They want the contracts to show that if they work on an episodic TV show, say I don't know, The Rookie, that runs for 6 or 8 months. They want the writers to get a contract for that period. They want them to have some job security while the show they're working on is running. Now, the studios don't want to do that, and they tend to run on weekly contracts. You, at your work, how happy would you be to stay on a weekly contract? I'm not sure you would. On some comedy and variety shows, they only get daily rates, which is basically means you get paid for that day you're in. If you don't work tomorrow, you don't work tomorrow. Again, none of us would live like that. We just wouldn't. We just want at least some job security, right? And not to be only earning the absolute minimum. Just to show the massive difference between what the Writers Guild of America are asking for and what the studios are suggesting, the Writers Guild of America's proposal would be basically worth around $429 million. The council proposal by the studios was only worth $86 million, and half of that $86 million was an increase in the scale, so an increase in that minimum wages. That is a massive difference, and you can really understand why the WGA feel like they're hitting their heads against a brick wall. But how will the strike affect some of those big projects that we know and love and are desperately waiting to get greenlit, like Babylon 5, the new Orville series, and Stargate? The problem is, we don't know. We have no idea how long this strike will last. And the rumor is actually that a lot of the studios are okay with this strike and even want it do persist. They want to be able to cancel certain projects and save face and basically blame the writers for it. If that is true, even on any level, this strike could go on for a while. Last time it went on for 100 days. Now, on streaming services, we may not quite notice it so much because at the end of the day, the writing for any new streaming project is done, and then the filming's done, then it gets released. But things that are on a network that are being produced right now, like The Late Late Show and things like this, things that are written on the day and then produced and put out, they're all pretty much cancelled for the moment. On the networks, you're really going to see this effect. But the streaming services, they feel like they can wait. At the end of the day, they've got scripts for stuff and they're going to film it. There'll be a bit of a gap, but they're probably not that bothered. And they're willing to let the writers go on strike and then get a deal that's a lot closer to the $86 million than it is to the $429 million the WG actually want. They're also, I suspect, desperately trying to keep hold of their anonymity and not wanting to have any sort of major transparency when it comes to viewing numbers. So we don't really know what's going to happen. But I'll keep following the story and I'll let you know as soon as I know anything. But guys, get to the comments, tell me what you think of the WGA right to strike. They just don't want to earn minimum pay. And who does? But get into the comments and tell me exactly what you think. If you are new to the channel, please like, subscribe, hit that bell notification, and if you could go over to patreon.com/SciTrek, you get to see most of our new videos first, and for a small contribution each month that really helps the channel out, you get to see them without the adverts. As always, please stay safe, and I'll see you next time.